Hello to everyone. This is our first Baltic talk, and since we are running this eutrophication campaign, the first topic today will be about industrial animal farming. I'm Federica Pastore from CCB, and here is Mikhail Durkin, who is our executive secretary. And so we will shortly talk about this topic. And the first question is, what is industrial animal farming?
Yeah, well, it's a bit tricky, but as many of you know, hopefully, we have released, a couple of years ago, we have released the report on industrial animal farming in the Baltic Sea region, and it provides quite good overview of what industrial animal farming is and what is the scale of it, and we are constantly updating the report as well as the website that is dedicated to this issue. So basically, if you would speak in legal terms, industrial animal farming means, or industrial animal farm means an entity which pursue organized, continuous, professional and for-profit production activities consisting in intensive, industrialized, large-scale livestock farming, most commonly operating as agricultural conglomerates. So quite long and general explanation and definition, I would say. There are definitions available in other legal texts, for example, in Industrial Emissions Directive, as well as in various HELCOM documents. But basically, if we are speaking about industrial animal farm, we are speaking about 2 or 3 categories. Farms for production of poultry, pigs, and within the Baltic Sea region we also add cattle. As regards the scale, meaning what is the level of production, what is the production capacity of such a farm, within EU it was set in Industrial Emissions Directive that by law large-scale livestock farms are defined as installations which operate under integrated permit with more than 400,000 or 400,000 places of poultry, or with more than 2,000 places for production pigs over 30 kilograms, or with more than 750 places for sows. Within HELCOM area, as I already mentioned, the Baltic Sea Action Plan defines that also large cattle farms should be included into the category of industrial animal farming installations, and those should be starting from the level of 400 animal units, livestock units. So this is about the scale of production, and the previous definition that I gave you in the very beginning also stands for the technology of production, why it is not just a private farm, and why it is called industrial farm. So it would imply that such farms have large stables or barns or places for hosting or holding that livestock or poultry, and that various processes, various technological processes connected to the production of meat or poultry are industrialized with specific technologies applied. So quite long explanation to quite comprehensive and complex issue.
Okay, and what about the negative effects of industrial animal farming, and what is the connection between industrial animal farming and eutrophication?
Yeah, well, again, as I said, it is a complex and comprehensive issue in general, and one of the main negative environmental impacts connected to industrial animal farming is naturally overproduction of nutrients in terms of excreta by the animals, and when we talk about poultry or pigs or cattle, it is anyway the manure that is produced in one or another form and in one or another fraction. It could be solid manure, it could be liquid manure, and it is also urine. So all those, as we tend to call them wastes, that are naturally not wastes, but rather resources that we need to prevent of leaking to the watercourses. All of those materials or byproducts of the main production, they contain quite high amount of nutrients. And if those materials are not handled properly, they generate a risk of leaching nutrients into the watercourses and further into the Baltic Sea. So that's naturally perhaps the environmental problem or environmental risk number one. But if we would think about the whole issue in a more holistic way, let's put it this way, it is about greenhouse gas emissions, and naturally these are more often occurring from open storages of manure, and this is more critical, for example, for cattle farming than to pig and poultry farming. It is about also about the use of pharmaceuticals, veterinary pharmaceuticals, that may leak into the watercourses the same way as the nutrients do. It is about the use of space. It is about the production capacities for growing fodder. So there are plenty of environmental aspects related to industrial animal production. And I don't think so that we should concentrate on each of those. These are quite extensively explained in the report that I already referred to, so you can have a look yourself into that. But as we are talking about eutrophication, as I mentioned, yes, the problem number one is extensive generation of nutrients that, if those are not prevented from leaking into the watercourses, they may generate eutrophication and over-enrichment by nutrients, both in the close-by areas, in the watercourses nearby, like lakes or rivers. But in the long run, they will generate also excessive load of nutrients running down to the Baltic Sea, and thus contributing to the eutrophication in the Baltic itself.
Okay, but we have some solutions. I mean, we can prevent this environmental risk. Can we restore the Baltic Sea?
Yes, and there are a number of solutions. Starting perhaps from the very general one, do we need industrialized animal farming in the region? Just judging by the capacities of those industrial farms that we have already in the region, and basically the same report in 2013 already stated that we have roughly about 1,500 industrial pig and poultry farms in all Baltic Sea states. Plus, well, when we call Baltic Sea states, I would say it's not only about countries that are located around the Baltic Sea shores itself, but it's also about countries in the catchment. So in the catchment area, we have, I would say, closer to 2,000 installations, not even 1,500, because this amount was only about pig and poultry, remember about that, and cattle farms were not counted in that assessment. But there is data available about that, both at Eurostat as well as National Agricultural Census, which you can get. You can also obtain this information from our website. And we do not even count yet another category of industrial animal farming, which is, for example, horse stables. And just for you to know, just in Sweden, we have roughly about 300,000 horses that are that are kept in the stables, and we have them for recreational purposes mainly, and we do not even know about the scale of the problem connected to the manure storages and manure originating from those stables, or we do not know precisely, I would say. So again, back to the solutions and back to what we can do to improve the situation. I will not speak about are the environmental aspects, but about eutrophication. And I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that all manure storages are done in a proper way and manure is handled in the right way, in the right order. And this can be done in different ways and with different technologies. What is important to remember is that, first of all, when planning such a farm, there should be a very strict request that manure storage should be enough in the capacity terms, and the capacity of manure storages is quite often calculated based on the number of months for how long the manure can be stored in such a storage. And within the Baltic Sea area, it is quite widely accepted, and it is actually a legal term within the Baltic Sea Marine Environment Protection Commission and respective convention, that manure storage should be at least for 6 months of storing manure without spreading it into the fields. However, this is not the case within European Union, and European legislation does not require, in some cases, such long storage of manure. That is because of the differences in climate conditions, in soil conditions and whatnot. And 6 months manure storage capacity is only required for so-called nitrate vulnerable zones that are designated by each EU member state based on their own estimates and their own assessments of the vulnerability of specific waters to nitrate pollution. Unfortunately, it would be, of course, great if we would have had in the Baltic Sea area all arable land and all agricultural land, and basically the territories of all Baltic states within the catchment designated as nitrate vulnerable zones. However, it is not the case yet. So back to the solutions. So first, manure storages of proper capacity. Secondly, manure storages should have cover, should have lids to avoid emitting greenhouse gases. And, well, in fact, those not are only greenhouse gases. It is nitrous oxides, which also can be transferred to quite long distances and also contribute to eutrophication when they fall on the land surface or water courses with rainfall, with the precipitation. Oops, sorry. Reports are falling. So that's the second important solution. And of course then the question comes, what to do with the amount of manure that is generated? How to treat it in the way that even if it is placed on the fields, then it is not leaking nutrients into the watercourses. And here comes yet another area, very big area of different methods and different solutions that can be applied. This range from protective strips along the watercourses that would trap nutrients from the fields and prevent them from entering the watercourses. These could be artificial wetlands that are arranged specifically to trap the drainage from the fields and act as natural wastewater treatment plants. And even if we would think about some modern solutions, this probably should be done in a way that manure could be handled through biogas production, when excessive amounts of manure from the storage are transported to special anaerobic tanks where they are stored for a certain period of time, and where they generate methane or biogas that can be used then for different purposes, for heating, for fuel production and whatnot. And we are very thoroughly looking into that types of facilities, because unfortunately when the biogas production was really blooming in the Baltic Sea area. In many cases, unfortunately, the producers themselves, they looked mostly into energy production, into production of biogas, and they have used, they have specially, they were doing harvesting of so-called energy crops instead of using the manure for biogas production. So we are certainly for the utilization of manure for biogas production, but not for growing energy crops in order to produce biogas, because that only extends the problem rather than prevents negative impacts of that. And well, again, then the question comes what to do with the remaining substrate when the biogas is produced. The substrate should be stored anywhere, in some places or spaces, and of course, if the amounts of manure produced are high, then it's only small fraction that is caught with biogas, and then the remainder needs to be stored somewhere. And again, there are technologies available already for trapping nutrients from the remaining substrate, recovering nutrients. And here we talk already about the nutrient recycling practices and methods. So there are methods available for that. I will not talk extensively about that, but you can Google those cases, or you can also look into our web pages for further information. And all in all, when we talk about how to prevent negative impacts, and particularly negative impacts related to eutrophication, in industrial animal farming, we talk about so-called best available techniques. Best available techniques or best available technologies have been developed through many years in a very close coordination and cooperation with the industry itself. And the so-called best available technique reference documents developed within the European Union. And there is one specific for industrial rearing of poultry and pigs, and that is under industrial animal farming, industrial emissions directive of the European Union. So all large-scale industrial animal farming installations should follow those best available techniques. And in addition to the reference documents itself, there are also so-called BREF conclusions that contain specific emission limit values, how much you are allowed to release either as liquid waste or solid waste or emissions into the atmosphere based on the application of best available techniques. So that integrated environmental permits or integrated production permits that are released for a specific installation do have those limit values set clearly for a specific installation or specific farm. So this is very important to remember, best available techniques. And in the Baltic Sea region, we're also talking that besides industrial rearing of poultry and pigs, we have to have best available techniques available also for cattle farming. So this is yet a work to be done.
Okay, thank you. I have only one last question, and it's about what is CCB doing on this topic?
Well, first of all, being a watchdog, environmental watchdog, what we are doing is that we are looking after the situation where we are assessing current state of art in the region, both with regards to the production as well as with regards to the available options on how to minimize environmental risks associated with industrial animal farming. And when it comes to the production capacities and number of farms in each country, as I already mentioned, here is the report, and we are updating the information contained in this report on annual basis. Secondly, we are looking after the development of best available techniques, and CCB took part in the development of best available techniques for industrial rearing of poultry and pigs. We have participated in a specific group for that under Industrial Emissions Directive. And thirdly, what we do is also we are promoting BATs, we are promoting application of best available techniques all around the Baltic Sea. And not only within EU countries, but also working a lot in non-EU countries like Ukraine, Belarus and Russia, where with the help of dedicated seminars or dedicated workshops, we meet with the producers and we inform them about the most modern requirements and most modern technologies available to minimize those environmental risks. I can only add to that through this cooperation and through such seminars we also learn from the countries themselves how it is done at the national level in country A or B. And for example, through those seminars we have learned that in Russia there is also a new law that basically follows the same principle and the same idea of developing best available techniques for industrial animal production. And this law should be enforced starting from the 1st of January 2019. So all new installations that are built after that date should already comply with the best available techniques that are compiled now in the similar type of reference document, while the old installations have got an interim period through which they have to adapt to these requirements. So once again, monitoring the situation with regards to capacities and with regards to available technologies. Secondly, participating in updating of legal requirements, both at EU level as well as at the Baltic-wise HELCOM level. And thirdly, promoting application of best available techniques in all countries of the Baltic Sea catchment area.
Okay, so we can say also that all the information and details are on our website, and you can also write any other questions if you have on our social media. So follow us, because next week we will have another Baltic Talks. So thank you for today. Thank you, Misha.
Thank you, Federica.
And see you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.